Are you holding on to the hurt? Well, whatever you hold on to, it holds on to you. 20 years ago, I was introduced to this forgiveness process, and 1 hour and 5 steps later, I was a different person, lighter, happier, freer. And I never would have believed it. And it all started with a question. Is there anyone in your life that you'd like to forgive, but you haven't been able to? Well, for me, yes, there was an obvious yes. An old friend. He'd behaved in ways that I found really hard to understand and accept, and therefore hard to forgive. And I distanced myself from him. We were no longer friends, but I still carried the hurt. Well, 5 steps later, I was able to let go of that hurt, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. Now, before I go on though, if you're yet to see last week's video on the 4 mistakes that make forgiveness impossible, then please check it out. The video you're watching now, it's really a part 2, moving on from the foundations that I shared last week. And this 5-step process was created by Kenneth Cloak. I've added the 6th step. I've also created a PDF sheet for you to download outlining these 6 steps. The link is in the description below. Download it so you've got your own copy to refer to. Okay, there's a small step before step 1, and this is a key foundation. First, you have to really want it. Forgiveness is of the heart, so you have to want it from your heart. Again, not for anyone else's benefit, but for you, from your heart for you. It means being willing to let go of your attachments to the patterns and to the stories and to what you gain from holding on. And very important here, the aim of this process is to free yourself, not to create further distress. If any of the steps in this process are re-traumatizing, then please don't continue. Seek professional help. You are worth it. Okay, step 1. Step 1 is to remember. Remember exactly what happened and how you felt. Remember everything in detail. Because without remembering, this process is very shallow and superficial, and forgiveness is neither of these things. Now, I won't bore you with every detail, but my old friend was helping me through a hard time, and then whilst I was vulnerable, he behaved in a way that I experienced as a betrayal of our trust and friendship. Okay, then step 2. Step 2 is to imagine. Imagine as clearly as possible what the other person must have gone through and what they likely would have felt. Now, important here, you're not trying to understand why the other person did what they did. Stick to the whats, what they must have gone through and what they must have felt. Now, in my situation, I'd never really thought of this before. What had he gone through? I was too wound up in my own story. And as I went through this, I could only really think of 2 possible scenarios. Either he knew what he was doing was wrong, or he didn't and he was oblivious to it. And if he knew his actions were wrong, he would have been living with a lot of guilt. Now, of course, none of this excuses his actions, but that's not what forgiveness is about. Step 3 is to identify. Identify all the reasons for not forgiving, including what you're gaining from holding on. And then also to identify all the assumptions and expectations that you had of the other person that they didn't meet. Now, this is a big step. This is where a lot of the work is. This is where the aha moments are, the realizations and the transformations. Work hard here. Open up, dig deep. Stay here as long as you need to uncover as much as you can. Now, the likely truth is that the reasons that you'll find for not forgiving, they won't hold up. And this realization that there's no reasonable reason to not forgive, it's an important part of the forgiveness process. Now, in my situation, all I could identify was that he should have known better and that there were no excuses. But of course, forgiveness is to release me, not him, and therefore those reasons just don't cut it. Now, other reasons for not forgiving that need to be identified are what you've gained and what you continue to gain from holding on. For example, sympathy from others, the anger and the energy that anger provides, the conflict and the chaos in your life, and the stories and the identity. Sometimes we can really create our identity and form it around these experiences. And you have to ask yourself, are you really willing to let all this go. Now, after that, you need to move on to identifying all the assumptions and expectations that you had of that other person that they didn't meet. And this is always interesting. Now, I identified I had a lot of expectations of him. The expectation that he would see life exactly the way I see it, and he would act exactly the way I expect him to act, that he'd have the same ethics as me, that he'd have the same standards that I expect of myself. Now, these are big expectations. I also found I'd been making a massive assumption. The assumption that if he'd acted the way I expected of him, the way I expected of a friend, that my life would be fine and rosy. And this is a big leap. I mean, he was helping me through my difficulties. The difficulties had nothing to do with him. And I often find this assumption with clients, I really do. If she hadn't cheated on me, Simon, or if he hadn't left me, we'd still be together and living as a happy family. Life would be rosy and good. Well, maybe, but given what's just happened, maybe not. And there's one other big expectation that again, we can all fall into this one, that people will meet your needs and wants without you saying what they are or asking for them, that they should know you well enough to read your mind. And of course, there are assumptions that lead on from that too, that if you have to ask or say what your needs or wants are, then they clearly haven't been paying attention and they don't love you enough. Now, this is so massive that Ken Cloke, who created these 5 steps, he defines forgiveness as releasing yourself from the burden of your own false expectations. Stay here, work at this. This is powerful. This is transformational. Step 4 is to choose. To choose to release yourself and your life from all those reasons, all the expectations, and all the gains from your heart for you. And then with this choice, start to look at what this will mean in reality. How will your life be different now? What will you be doing different once you forgive? How will you act around that person? How will you respond to friends that want to talk badly about them for what they did? What will your new stories be? The stories of forgiveness and letting go. Now, I determined I wouldn't say a bad word about him or be part of any conversation if others were talking badly. I'm just not going to entertain those stories anymore. I've forgiven, I've let go. I also committed to remembering the good times we had as well as the bad times, forgiving and remembering. And often once step 3 is done, step 4 generally falls into line. If it doesn't, if it's too difficult, spend some time identifying what it will cost you to continue to hold on. And I covered this concept in the video, The Hidden Costs of Relationship Conflict. This might also be a sign that counselling or therapy could be useful here. Step 5 is to design a ritual to help you release, or a symbolic act, something to symbolise the letting go process. Now, don't get too caught up in the words here. It's just about creating a physical act that you can do that you attach with the meaning of letting go, and then you go and do it. Now, you're then committing to the reality that once that act's been carried out, that you've then moved into forgiveness. You've let go and you've released yourself. In my case, I had a coffee. The old friend and I would often drink coffee together. It was symbolic. And whilst I drank the coffee, I said to him all I wanted to say. And at the end of the coffee, the letting go was complete. Well, almost. And here's where step 6 comes in. Step 6 is to be assertive with your thoughts. What I've learned over the years is that our mind can take a while to catch up to our heart. Once you've forgiven, it's likely that you'll still be visited by some of the old pre-forgiveness thoughts. And often what happens then is we jump to the conclusion that we obviously haven't forgiven. I mean, I haven't let go, because if I had, I wouldn't be having these thoughts anymore. But our mind takes a while to catch up. When this happens, when these old thoughts visit you, it's essential that you tell them to leave you alone, to go away, and get tough on them. Go away. I've let you go now. You're not welcome here anymore. When you're assertive and hard on your thoughts after completing the first 5 steps, what happens is that these thoughts come back less frequently and they come back with less intensity. Keep sending them away and eventually they'll leave and they won't come back. Now your forgiveness is complete. Obviously, there are far bigger wrongs that people experience in life than my example. However, I've facilitated this process with enough clients over the years to know that it works. And to be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean we have to put up with a continuation of the behaviour. It doesn't mean you have to stay friends or partners. It does mean that you release yourself and you reclaim your energy. Forgiveness is a muscle. Exercise it, use it and work it, and you'll get fitter, stronger, happier and healthier. And if you've enjoyed the video today, if you're enjoying the channel, then show your appreciation with likes, comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and also recommend this channel out to others. All this helps the channel grow. And please also remember to download the free PDF sheet outlining these 6 steps. Again, the link's in the description below. Enjoy the week ahead. Be kind to yourself along the way, and we'll see you next week.